based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Belal Muhammad potentially facing Kamaru Usman for his first title defense. And I hate this. I truly do hate this. And I'm going to list, valid reasons in this video why I believe Kamaru Usman getting a title shot would be one of the most despicable things that the UFC has done. It's a worse title shot than the one that Colby Covington got last year against Leon Edwards. And I hate it. And the only way I would accept it as a fight would be if it happens at UFC 307 in Salt Lake City, Utah, just because that card right now is looking like, it doesn't really have a main event, right? We have Topuria versus Holloway for 308. We have O'Malley versus Murad for 306. And 307 looks a little bit dry right now. And most likely we're going to get a Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena type of main event. So that's not really good. So if Belal Muhammad is able to step in and maybe face a Kamaru Usman for 307, that would be the only way I would accept this matchup. But I think it's really unacceptable. Now, I know that the first argument that people are going to make when I say that is that there's not a clear number one contender, right? And I kind of agree with that. There's not a clear number one contender. However, out of all the contenders right now, if there's one fighter that I think deserves a title shot more than any other fighter, I think it's Jack Della Maddalena. I think he's the one that deserves a title shot. You don't just knock out or TKO Gilbert Burns and not get a title shot. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he has pretty good wins as well. I mean, he's coming off that win over Stephen Thompson, which, I mean, it's not that great of a win, right? Because Gilbert Burns beat Stephen Thompson. Belal Muhammad also beat Stephen Thompson. So beating somebody like Wonder Boy just doesn't have that same, I guess, value. It doesn't hold that same status, when moving up the welterweight division, because he's been beaten by so many guys. And, it wasn't like the most entertaining fight either, so I completely understand. But Shavkat, I mean, he beat Jeff Neal. He's beat Neil Magny. I think a win over Burns is more than what Shavkat Rakhmonov has done. Now, I understand why a lot of people want Shavkat Rakhmonov to get the next title shot. I think it's very interesting because of his streak, because of his aura. He looks like one of those fighters that is not going to lose. He has a great chin, has a lot of power. Maybe it's not super technical on the feet, but great submission skills, really nasty in the clinch. So I understand why people want to see Shavkat fight for the title, and he definitely looks like a future champion. But out of all the contenders right now, I think JDM deserves it more just because he beat Gilbert Burns. He's on a crazy win streak as well. And like I said, there's not a clear number one contender. I completely agree with that. I'm not saying that JDM has like a great case to fight for the title, but out of all the contenders, I think JDM and then Shavkat are the top two contenders to fight for the title. And Kamaru Usman, guys, I like Kamaru Usman. I'm actually a guy now that I appreciate Kamaru Usman, what he's done. His welterweight reign was actually pretty entertaining when you look back at it. I mean, I don't think those wins have aged very well, but I mean, it's still a pretty good legacy. Now, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with Kamaru Usman potentially facing Belal Muhammad, and I know that they've been going back and forth on Twitter, and I hate it. I honestly really hate it. And the reason why I hate it is because Kamaru Usman, has not won a fight since November of 2021 against Colby Covington in the rematch. He has not fought in the welterweight division since March of 2023. Think about that. And his fight against Khamzat Chimaev won. He did not win that fight, as much as I thought it was a draw. He did not win that fight, and it was not in the welterweight division. So how in the hell does Kamaru Usman deserve a title shot when his last two fights in the welterweight division, he's coming off a loss? Granting Kamaru Usman a title shot would be worse than when Colby Covington got his title shot last year. And if you think about the time frame, I believe Colby Covington fought Jorge Masvidal in March of 2022. He got the title shot against Leon Edwards December of 2023. And this would be kind of similar, right? Kamaru Usman, his last fight at welterweight was in March of 2022, and he would potentially get a title shot for potentially maybe December of 2024, maybe January 2025. But not only that, not only is it the same time frame and inactivity that Colby Covington had in the welterweight division, but at least Colby Covington was coming off a win against Jorge Masvidal, while Kamaru Usman would be coming off two losses in the welterweight division and getting a title shot against Belal Muhammad. Does that sound right to you? Does that sound like something that should happen? It is absolutely unacceptable. Super unacceptable. If you're an MMA fan, you should be absolutely pissed that there's even a chance that this fight can happen. You know, it should not happen. It should not happen. And if history has taught us one thing, is that every time an MMA fighter, a UFC fighter, has been granted an undeserved title shot, right? Not due to circumstances, right? Like somebody like Sean Strickland, who fought Israel Adesanya, that fight, took place because of a circumstance of Dricus du Plessis not being able to fight Adesanya, not being ready to fight. Now, that's a very different story. But in most cases, when fighters get undeserved title shots, it always ends up being a snoozy, a bad fight. Everybody always looks back at it and they're like, oh, they didn't deserve the title shot. Perfect example, Marlon Vera against Sean O'Malley. Did Marlon Vera deserve that title shot? Absolutely not. Now, at least for that fight, I kind of understand why they gave him the title shot, just because, he was the only one that technically beat Sean O'Malley, even though it was a fluke. So I understand the storyline there. But come on, Kamaru Usman versus Belal Muhammad? Usman getting another title shot? It's absolutely unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. And I think that if anybody's going to get a title shot, it should be JDM, Shavkat Ramanov, or even an Ian Gary, who's on a pretty good win streak. As much as I don't like Ian Gary, as much as I think he's a boring fighter, a very overrated striker, he deserves the title shot more than Kamaru Usman. And like I said, I'm a fan of Kamaru Usman. I like the guy. I think he actually put pretty fun fights when he was a champion. I mean, knocking out Jorge Masvidal, the 2 wars with Colby Covington, the way he finished Gilbert Burns. He had a good reign. But what are we doing here? What is the UFC doing here? What kind of thing are we setting up here? Is the title really about fighting the best? Because when you put these type of fights, right? Because yet again, we're going through the Covingtons, we're going through the Usmans. You're slowing down the division, and you're showing that you're not giving the opportunity to these new contenders that have good win streaks. And it's not like the welterweight division doesn't have any contenders. Like I said, there's not a clear one, but there are contenders. There's JDM, Shavkat Ramanov, Ian Gary. These guys have not fought for the title. And you're going to give Kamaru Usman a title shot coming off 3 losses. And not only that, guys. Kamaru Usman hasn't fought since October of 2023, when he stepped in on short notice against Khamzat Chimaev, which was pretty ballsy. Now, I respect it, right? I respect that, he was willing to get off the couch to face a killer like Khamzat Chimaev. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Kamaru Usman had nothing to lose from facing Khamzat Chimaev on short notice. Now, luckily for him, he actually did pretty well in the fight, right? He made Khamzat Chimaev look kind of bad. Khamzat Chimaev gassed out. He was able to survive that first very dominant round by Khamzat Chimaev, right? I understand that. A lot of respect. You got to give credit to Kamaru Usman for that. However, if his main goal was to truly become the champion of the welterweight division in this whole year off, right? Because he didn't take that much damage against Khamzat Chimaev, why hasn't he been calling out a contender, right? Like if he would have fought a Shavkat Ramanov in July or June, right? If he wins that fight, okay, get your title shot against Belal Muhammad. You deserve it. At least I think so. But in this whole time off, Kamaru Usman has been quiet this whole time, saying, oh, I'm not ready to fight. I'm just training right now. And now that Belal Muhammad has won the title against Leon Edwards, all of a sudden, he's super motivated. You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck that, man. Fuck that. Kamaru Usman does not deserve the title shot. And what should happen, I think, it should be Belal Muhammad versus JDM, Shavkat Ramanov versus Kamaru Usman, Ian Gary versus Leon Edwards. I think those are the matchups to make in the welterweight division. Or you could even make the case Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Ramanov, right? Because I get the interest in Shavkat. He's undefeated. He's looked very dominant. He's finished all of his opponents. I understand the appeal. And you make Jack Della Maddalena versus Kamaru Usman, and then you make Leon Edwards versus Ian Gary. Those are the rightful matchups that need to happen next, right? And if we're being honest, Colby Covington kind of ruined this as well. Colby Covington should have fought Ian Gary back in June or July. Like, that's the fight that should have taken place, right? Because Colby Covington, I believe he's ranked number 5 or number 4. So he's just kind of holding up the division as well. But I think that these are the matchups that need to happen next. And like I said, I'm going to be very pissed off if Kamaru Usman is able to get a title shot against Belal Muhammad. And I just think on a principle, it just should not happen. Just based on principle, it should not fucking happen. Now, we could get into the ins and outs. Would it be an entertaining fight? Yeah, potentially, right? Kamaru Usman has good grappling, good takedown defense. You know, he's a little bit older. Belal Muhammad showed improvements in his boxing. Kamaru Usman, you know, has a good jab. You know, we could get into the ins and outs of the fight, but at this point right now, I don't really give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about who would win. This is a fight that cannot happen. It just cannot happen. Kamaru Usman hasn't won a fight since November of 2021 against a Colby Covington, which, if we're being honest, it was maybe a draw. It was a very, very competitive fight. Okay, Kamaru Usman won the fight. He hasn't fought in the welterweight division since March of 2023. And against Hamza Chimaev, he went to a draw, did not take that much damage, and hasn't fought since. So in what world does Kamaru Usman deserve a title shot in the welterweight division? And I know that as MMA fans, we kind of like tend to let things like slide just because, okay, we want to see the matchup. What would happen, right? Kamaru Usman is a former champion. We got to respect our former champs. Fuck that. No, we cannot let this slide. We just cannot let this slide. He does not deserve the title shot. If he was really interested in becoming the champion of the welterweight division again, he would have fought a contender by now. He could have fought an Ian Gary. He could have fought a JDM, a Shavkat Ramonov, but he was quiet the whole time. He was quiet the whole time. Unless I'm wrong, was Kamaru Usman calling out Shavkat? Was he calling out JDM? Fuck no. So there is no way that this fight should happen. It should not happen. And like I said, there are so many examples of fighters who've gotten undeserved title shots and just done horribly. Just done horribly. Right? Like somebody like Belal Muhammad, he paid his dues. He was in a long win streak. He beat a lot of guys in the welterweight division. And he put a great performance against Leon Edwards. Because he deserved it. Right? He had been putting in the hard miles. Colby Covington did not deserve it. But at least Colby was coming off a win. Usman is coming off 3 losses. Fuck no.